welcome everyone to the Kerouac house. For those of you who don't know, this is where Jack Kerouac was living when he published On the Road, and where he wrote Dharma Bums. My name is Alex Gurtis. I'm a board member here at the Kerouac house, and so we're so happy to have you all here tonight as we welcome the amazing Katharine Coldiron, former reader for the Kerouac house, and just brilliant film essayist and just genuine awesome human being overall.
Thank you.
So this house right now serves as a writing residency. We bring in 6 authors from around the globe. Each year we open it up, they apply, they go through a vigorous vetting process. We choose 6 of them, and then they get to stay here for 6 weeks. It is an unbelievable asset, I think, to the community. A great way of preserving Jack's legacy. And, I think it's just great for the artists, right? On that note, though, this is a Sears house from the 1950s. It is, as you've noticed, on a little bit of a slant. So if you're feeling a little generous tonight, there's a donation box in the back, and we're currently trying to raise some funds to do renos for the house. I'm not expecting anyone to drop a reno-sized check, but all money helps. We're a nonprofit. We don't make money. We give it away. So please consider donating tonight. And so on that note, though, the writer of the hour. So the way tonight's going to work is we're going to have a little discussion and Q&A about her book. And we're going to, at some point, I think I'll have you read, if that's all right.
That's fine.
And then we'll open it up to the floor. So. And
I have prizes for people who ask questions.
Oh?
They're not very good. Like, you're all, ooh, no. It's like they're all right prizes. One of a kind.
So, all right. I don't have your bio in here.
Oh. I can read it if you want. No.
I'm gonna give you the proper introduction.
All right.
So this is the last step of her book tour. She's been on the road for 6 weeks now. So this is her grand finale.
I've been on the road for 4 weeks now, but it feels like 3 months. It's a lot.
All right. It's 4 weeks.
But this is it. This is the last stop, and then I can go home.
Yeah. So she graced us with her grand finale here. So Katharine Coldiron is the author of Ceremonials, Junk Film, and Wire Mothers. Her work as a book critic has appeared in the Washington Post, The Guardian, Times Literary Supplement, and many other places as an essayist, in conjunctions Miss, Booth, and elsewhere. She and her books have been profiled in 3 countries on radio, television, and radio and television. And so this book, the way I'd like to introduce it is Out There in the Dark is an essay collection that blurs the lines between the film essay, the lyric essay, speculative memoir, and autofiction. It is a perfect blend, I guess, of all major nonfiction types, I would say, creative nonfiction types. Harry Hoke, author of Open Throat, put it that Katharine Coldiron's iconoclastic critical gaze and decadent prose alchemizes cinema and autobiography into a book as vivid and resonant as the classic films within.
He also said in an email, this was extremely my shit. Which was like, I couldn't put that on the back of the book because it wasn't part of the official blurb, but I was like, yes.
I think that would have made the book, though.
I mean.
And so, on that note, though, you've recently appeared 3 times, I think 3 times now, right, on the BBC?
It's actually 4.
4 times on the BBC in the last week and a half, 2 weeks?
Yeah, it was like, they called me 4 times in a row. It was very weird.
Yeah. And you were discussing junk films, the topic of your previous book, which focused on bad movies and why we need them. In contrast, though, Out There in the Dark uses the lens of classic Hollywood films, the height of U.S. cinema, if you will, to examine larger abstract truths. So I think we're all curious, what made classic films a better choice than junk films for this book in particular?
Oh. Well, so I wrote this book before I wrote junk film. And I thought at the time that I wasn't going to keep writing about movies, which is hysterical to me now because I don't think I'm ever going to stop writing about movies. But I thought that I had these grand statements with a capital S to say about certain important films, but also some less important films that had to do with my kind of life. And so interwove experiences from my life with these important movies. Singin' in the Rain, Sound of Music, movies that most people have seen. And then I didn't really think, like, junk film is just basically critical essays that they don't really get into me until the very, very last one. And I wasn't thinking about how to integrate myself into the work with this book, partly because I had like already done it and it was over and I was finished. So like, I know that's not a very satisfying answer, because it's like, actually it went the opposite way. You know, I can't like, oh, my evolution as a writer, XYZ. No, it wasn't like that. But yeah, it's a good question.
No, but it's interesting though, because you mentioned the grand statements, right? Like wanting to make grand statements, and you are, I mean, clearly with the BBC having, you know, not let up over the last couple weeks, have made a name for yourself in the film critic space. So like, what's been your journey then? Like, was it just to make these grand statements, or like, what brought you into the film critic world as a writer?
Well, so I should have realized that this is what I was supposed to do. Because when I went to college, what I wanted to do was be a film restorer. Like, I wanted to fix old movies. I didn't want to, like, I wanted to direct, but I thought that was not possible. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to sit in a library and clean up movies for the rest of my life. That didn't work out. So I thought, well, I'll work a regular job and I'll write on the side and that'll be fine. So I was a paralegal. Like, then I became a writer more because things worked out in my household so that I could afford to be a writer. And something just kept tugging me back to movies. Like, it just kept pulling me in that direction. And, you know, it's nice to write short fiction. It's nice to write experimental novellas, but the thing that you should be writing about is movies. And when I wrote this book, I was influenced by John Haskell's book, I Am Not Jackson Pollock, which is a collection of short stories where he fictionalizes certain famous situations. Like, he fictionalizes some stuff from the set of Touch of Evil, and he fictionalizes some stuff from the set of Psycho, and he fictionalizes the car wreck that Jackson Pollock and his wife got into. So when I read that, I was like, oh, you can do this? I didn't know you could do that. I'm going to do that. And that's why I fictionalized a bunch of stuff about movies in this book. And then after that, I was like, I'm not done. I think I want to write 100 pages about Plan 9 from Outer Space. And thence this book.
All right. Well, okay, so that's interesting, because it like seems like you didn't set out to become a film critic. The film critic life chose you.
Yeah.
And yet now you live, I know you originated, if you will, like on the East Coast. Grew up in Virginia, more or less. I know you're an Army brat. But
Navy.
Navy.
Very important difference.
Yeah. But like, how did you, you know, I kind of know this story, but for everyone here, like, how did you end up in the heart of Hollywood if you didn't, you know, set out to, you know, write about Hollywood?
I mean, I think it's the same story. Los Angeles called me, and I was very lucky that I got to move there. And it's the only place where I stepped off the plane and I felt like I was home. You know, I've lived in lots of different places because I was a Navy brat, and Los Angeles, I went there when I was 19 on a visit, and I got off the plane and I went, oh, that's what it feels like to belong somewhere, which is not something I'd ever experienced. And it took me 11 years to get back, but I did.
Yeah. So, film, being this, you know, force in your life, I guess then the question that needs to be raised is, what's your earliest film memory?
Watching Star Wars on Betamax when I was really little, and watching, I'm really sorry that this is the case, but dressing up in my mom's old prom dresses and watching Gone with the Wind. Oh. Like I'm very sorry, it's a problematic movie, but that was what I remember. I would sit on my parents' floor, and it's a little tiny TV, and they taped it from TNT, so it had these interstitials and like 80s TV commercials, and I remember all of them. I remember all of it, and that's the one.
Yeah. So one of the brilliant things about this book is how, like, if you're into film, you could approach it just as like a series of film essays. But if you're like only, you know, if you're coming at it from like an autobiographical memoir perspective, this also takes on that texture. It's this really astounding blend, I think, of like grounding within film, but also grounding within your life. And so I was wondering if you could maybe read a section from the book.
Sure.
And yeah.
What would you like me to read?
Ooh. So I think, So this book, one of the things, like beyond just the balance of film and memoir, is also the use of so many different forms. And so the two essays that stuck out to me were put right next to each other, but it was the one about teeth and the one directly after that. And so,
Okay.
yeah.
So I read Where the West Commences, which is about the Misfits. I read that at Chautauqua, and it was a huge failure. So I am going to stick with the one about teeth. Do you want me to be mad at John D'Agata, or do you want me to read about myself? No, I got it.
Okay.
This is great. Right. It's a page. Perfect. And also, I've heard from so many people, like everybody has a tooth story. So they love this essay because they're like, I have a tooth story too. For those of you who are following along, it's page 44. This is great. I love it. Story hour. I had 10 dental appointments in 3 months. This is me fixing my teeth because I needed new veneers. For 3 weeks, I wore what amounted to a glued-in mouth guard, which chipped and smelled bad and made me lisp and offered scant protection from hot and cold foods. I laid still in a dental chair for many, many hours. For all this, I paid $11,000. When the veneers came back from the lab where they'd been hand-sculpted, I dropped one in my palm and poked at it. This falsehood lying here. I had chosen it. In the absence of another option, because the enamel on my real teeth was gone forever, I had chosen it. They gave me nitrous before they drilled off the plastic teeth. My old veneers had been on for so long they were wearing away like shale under a breakwater. I asked the dental assistant to take a picture of what was under there. My real teeth are stubby, ground down, hideous. You can still see the antibiotic staining. You can also see the pink mask over my nose for the nitrous. After many hours in the chair, after unmeasured time in a pink echoing cloud of NPR jazz that reaffirmed my decision to stay away from drugs lest I lose my life to them, after talks and jokes aplenty with my dentist and the unseemly enthusiasm of his receptionist and the barely shod contempt of his assistant, after all that, I bore new, perfectly colored, beautiful, and placed porcelain teeth. No more strange gaps or mismatched length or worrying stains on the edges. They look like real teeth, but they aren't. Porcelain does not collect plaque, and it feels a half-degree colder against my tongue. They are hard to floss, and they sound like glass when tapped with a fingernail, and eating almonds feels like eating chalk. I smile like an American.
Love that. So, I guess, what was your process for putting this book together? Like, did the essays come first, or did the autobiography, aspects come first? And then question 2 is, how did you know when to bring in the outside sources? That passage didn't quite touch upon that, but that was one thing that really stood out to me, is how flawlessly it blended. You'll be within autobiography, and then suddenly a Wikipedia thing, entry, and then back into a film, and then back into autobiography. So how did you know when to bring those in, and what was your process for determining what aspects to bring in? So
I am really glad this is my last event, because I do not want to answer that question ever again. Because the answer is, I was interested in the process of crashing one thing into another and seeing what happened. And I wrote this book mostly during grad school, so I was very supported, and it was an MA, not an MFA, so no competition. And so because of that, it was very much I think that something about dental veneers is fake, and something about Singin' in the Rain is fake, but both of those things are real. And then I learned the thing on Wikipedia about the fact that veneers were invented in Hollywood in the 1920s. And I was like, well, that's my connection. That's where I put that together. And so these things just kind of proceeded out of each other. And the story about the Misfits, I knew that I wanted to write about the Misfits. And I knew that for, a year and a half. But I couldn't figure out anything to marry it to. And in that year and a half, I started working at the barn. And so this essay just marinated forever while I waited to have that experience that I could put it together with. So some of these came out very easy. Some of them took forever. But for all of them, it was instinct that braided things together. In the craft way, there was actual literal cutting and taping, with paper and scissors. Oh, wow. But in terms of how I knew what to put things together, I do not have a good answer to that. And I really wish I did at this point, but I don't.
Yeah. I think that's just really cool that you were able to instinctively determine where those lines blurred and came in. And I think that's something that's so natural too to our experience of, engaging with film and with essays, like as writers. So I can totally understand that. What made you choose the movies you chose though? Because it was really...
I don't know, man.
Okay.
I knew that Singin' in the Rain and Veneers went together, like I knew that. And I knew after I watched The Misfits again that I wanted to write about the horses in them. And like the first essay I wrote was Underside about Kathy Ireland and Meryl Streep. I don't know why that's happening. But after that, the Sound of Music essay was the one.
Oh, okay.
And something about... One time I was watching it and the Von Trapp children are marching down the stairs and I'm like, they did that once. I mean, they did it for a few takes, but they did it once. And it has been seen so many millions of times in exactly the same way by just probably billions of people. And that, it sounds like a stoned revelation, but it really did blow my mind to think about like exactly the same way they're going to come down the stairs into eternity. And that made me think about stories, and so it all just kind of came from there.
Okay. No, yeah, that's awesome. It was interesting rereading your book, because I think one of the essays that stuck out to me the most was the essay on Citizen Kane. And I love the juxtaposition of movies in there, but also like the take that you had about, honoring Citizen Kane's place within the cinematic hierarchy of movies, but also being like, I couldn't tell you the plot.
Yeah.
Like, the plot just doesn't stick with me. And, the ideas of, like, why that might be, like, I thought that was just such a, I don't know, I thought that was really bold. It was like,
Yeah. I haven't gotten any hate mail yet. But I expect some.
So, as somebody that studied film and as somebody that's so immersed in the world, where do you see the U.S. film industry going? Like, now that you've tackled you're living in Hollywood, stuff's spreading and sprawling out across the country. We're in this, I don't know, scary new era, bold new era. But where do you see stuff going?
Well, so this is something I say to people a lot. Hollywood is very cyclical. It swings back and forth, and we're in a period right now that really strongly resembles the 1950s in terms of they're just throwing more and more money at the budgets instead of making the movies better. They're just making more, bigger, more. And it's also a lot about sort of conservatism and conformity, personality-wise. Eventually that ended. Like, it ended in the late 1960s, and we had the 70s, which is like the best decade of American film. And then it happened again in the 80s. Everything kind of closed down, and then it opened back up again with the indie movement of the early 90s. Like, this is a cycle. It always happens this way. And this period of like bigger, loud conformity has been lasting so long, and I'm like waiting for the wave to break, and it's driving me crazy that it hasn't broken yet because they're proving me wrong. And so what I think is that American cinema is lagging behind the rest of the world in terms of innovation, visually, audially, performance-wise, like hugely, we're just way behind. But there is nobody that does spectacle better than Hollywood, and I don't think anybody ever will. Maybe Bollywood, maybe. But for me, that is our role day in, day out. And we're in a phase where spectacle is more important than art. I mean, we've always been in that phase. I can keep going. Like, it's always been a commercial thing. The fact that art is made about every 20 years is like, it's a quirk in the system. It's not the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, that makes sense. But do you, I guess, because we talked about this earlier when we were at lunch or breakfast, but we were talking about how like film industry kind of originated in New York and then moved to LA. Where do you see the new epicenter? Do you think LA will hold its epicenter, or do you think it's going to be more? So
there's a lot of talk
democratic
about that right now, and I think that as long as the money and the executives are in Los Angeles, it's always going to come back to that. There's a lot of filming everywhere else right now, and especially because the technology has advanced so that you don't need to be on a soundstage, not really. It's going to keep shifting depending on tax laws and kickbacks and all the stuff. So I don't know that there ever will be an epicenter. Like, the epicenter for television in the 1990s was fucking Vancouver, and no one could have predicted that, and I bet a lot of the audience doesn't know it, but that's the truth. And so for for it to be moving away from California is not really a surprise, but it's also sort of where production happens is not so much the important part is where the money is and where the lawyers are. Like, that's always going to be where the seat of power is.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And so I guess my last question before I turn it over to the audience is, I could ask you about your favorite movie. I feel like that'd be a very natural ending, but I think I'm more curious, and perhaps these overlap though, but what is the one movie you think everyone needs to watch? Like, if somebody is not into film and you need them to come to film, to understand film, what's that film that you're like, all right, you need to sit down and watch this film?
My favorite movie is Suspiria. Whether that is I don't think that's the movie everyone should watch. That's not recommended. I would tie between Sherlock Jr., Buster Keaton's movie from 1924, and The Night of the Hunter, Charles Laughton.
Oh, all right. Good picks.